Hi yarn lovers, it's Gary and I'm coming to you from my living room in Vancouver, Canada. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is video number 20 and today is December the 15th, that's right, 2019. The objective of this video is to look back at my first experiences that I had with crochet and knit and maybe offer up some opinions and some tips, suggestions that people can use who are also approaching crocheting and knitting for the first time. We're all too often challenged by new crafts or new things that we do, and because we hit that brick wall, perhaps maybe we give up. So I'm hoping to stress some of the, I guess, pitfalls that we could fall in, and maybe suggest veering away so that we are enjoying our craft and make it a long journey for years to come. It also looks at, like, if you're a knitter and you want to try crocheting, or if you're a crocheter and you want to try knitting. These are some tips that may actually help with the new craft. They're very similar, but they have differences too, vast differences. And with that, let's begin with supplies. All of us need supplies when we go and start a new hobby. So I'm going to talk about store-bought stuff and I'm going to talk about online stuff. So I went to my Michael's, which is a big box store here in Vancouver, and I purchased their house brand, which is called Loops and Thread, and this particular collection is called Charisma. So I don't have the ball band of this particular yarn. It's a bulky 5, but I have typed it out from the computer, and those are the specifications that are on the ball band, and in particular the size of the suggested needles and the hook. So we got a 9mm knitting needle and an 8mm crochet hook. And online, when I went online, I had this in a mystery bag from Mary Maxim, and it's their Titan collection. It's bulky 5 as well, and here's where we see the suggested recommended needle and crochet hook size. And this is saying it's a 5mm crochet hook, or a 6mm crochet hook, or a 6mm set of knitting needles. I am suggesting that we choose a 5 bulky weight yarn to do our tutorials with, purely because we can see the yarn on the hook or the needles quite easily, and I would suggest maybe a lighter color or a brighter color would be good. But if you love black or dark colors, by all means buy those yarns and use them, because we are wanting to make this a great experience for you. So what I've got here is a variegated, so it changes color throughout, and this one is a solid color, a musty yellow. And when you look at these up close, you see that there is a little bit of a halo on this yarn, and that's great to have that, because when you are looking at learning your stitch work, there's a good chance that you drop your needles, or your needles fall out of their stitches, or your hook, you drop your hook. So I'm trying to set up a situation where if the yarn is a live loop or a live stitch, and that happens to you, you lose your implement, that the work is not jeopardized by the yarn becoming unraveled. So I will show you a few samples of yarn in a few moments that may suggest that I'm suggesting to avoid for these particular tutorials and learning. So let's look at before that, let's look at the different things that you will need. So going by the ball band suggestion, I would say buy the various sized needles or hook that they're suggesting, and pair them with your tutorials that you're going to do. So this hook here that I've got is part metal, and it has an ergonomic handle here for comfort, And so when I hold it, it's quite comfortable and it's not slippery like a metal one would be. So there is greater surface contact here with the grip. And also what I liked about it is if I occasion to drop the hook, that the part here would capture the loop that was live, and it would save the yarn from ripping out of the work. So I liked this for that reason. I've since bought other styles of hooks, and like this set here, which is all metal, and I still occasionally drop my hook. So these are kind of the style of hook that would slip right through the loop. See, they're kind of like just metal all the way through. Yeah, buying them in sets like this is it's very ergonomic for price point, and if you buy them separately, they're a little bit more expensive. So those are the two things that you'll need. You need your yarn, and you'll need your matching hook or your matching set of needles to begin the tutorials. So some of the yarns, like I mentioned, to avoid when you're shopping for your tutorial supplies is these three things here. We have, okay, this one is Karen Latte Cakes. It is a very beautiful yarn. It's so soft, but for tutorials and learning to do stitch work, it doesn't lend to show off the stitches that you do or where to place your needle or hook. So it has very, very long fibers that stem from the central strand. So yeah, this variety you can save for a later time when you're actually more courageous and brave with and also confident with your stitch work. And I like that you'll do that, because that means that your journey is just beginning and it's got a long way to go. This one is a shiny sleek wool that is quite slippery. So when you hold this on your hand and you're working with it, it tends to kind of like run easily over your skin, and that might be a problem for creating true tension on what you naturally have. So you'll have very loose stitch work if you choose something like this, and it also enables the stitches to unravel if you were to drop your implement like your needle or your hook. This one here is a roving yarn that is spun very loosely, and I will show you how easy it is to separate. So what we do is we have this yarn. I can't really like show you when it's in a ball, but if I unravel it, we have the fibers kind of like separating, and it's quite easy to put your hook through or your needles through that, and you don't get a true definition of stitch work. So a beautiful yarn, lovely and soft, and that would work up lovely, but not for maybe the tutorial section of what your objective is. So the next thing that I want to talk about is when you're online and you are looking for great tutorials. I have some suggestions, but there are a plethora of different instructors out there that I would recommend you watching as many as you can. And when you make a connection to an instructor, that you stick with it and they have a definite formula. They've been doing it for many years. So if you connect with one, I would say stick with them. And there are various ones for various, I guess, tasks. So I watch a series of them, and I'll link them down below as examples. And I'll just mention them here. So I've done tutorials with Crochet Crowd. I've done tutorials with Fiber Spider, Very Pink Knits, RJ Knits, and Roxanne Richardson. So there are just a few. What I would do in my search when I'm looking at YouTube is I would punch in the very first thing to learn would be the foundation chain for crochet, or if you're doing knitting, it would be the cast on tutorials. So here is, my husband went through a little bit of a experiment, and he had set aside some time, which I would recommend that all new crafters do when they're setting up the best experience that they can have, and that is to set aside a certain amount of time where it's just devoted to the craft. And when I mean that, it means kind of like switching the phone off, making sure that the kids aren't going to run in and ask for snacks, maybe set them up with that prior to your little locked in time. And what he had done was that he explored the casting on using the finger and thumb. The yarn gets worked around in a formation, and you cast on using your finger and thumb. Ryan from RJ Knits does a different type of cast on, which is with his finger only, and it's brilliant to watch. It's an art form in itself. But my husband would be devoting all of the session that he had blocked the time off for just to do the cast on. Ripped it back, did the cast on, ripped it back, did the cast on, and didn't achieve any of this swatch at all for a couple of sessions that he had sat down with it. Then the next part would be, so you've done your cast on, you've done your foundation chain, type in for knitting the knit stitch tutorial, and for crochet the single crochet tutorial. Then you'll get a whole new series of choices of videos to watch. And so what my husband had done was he learnt the stitch and did maybe half a row, pulled it back, and then maybe a full row, pulled it back. He did a full row and then a turn around and did the other side, like you turn your work. He did the other side, and he did that for about 6 different goes just to get the use of turning your work over and continuing. And it wasn't until the 5th session where he began this very swatch, and it took him a couple more sessions to finish the swatch. But he's got like fantastic tension. It's similar all the way through, and he did a fantastic job. So on the mindset of like doing these little sit down things where you're just concentrating on the foundation chain or the cast on or the crochet, single crochet or the knit stitch, the objective behind it isn't to finish a garment, it isn't to finish a pattern, it's basically for you just to do the drills over again so that you instinctively know what to do when you approach any project. I find that the biggest pitfall that many of us do in new crafts is that we set our goals fairly high to begin with, and we look at, oh, I want to make a complete hat as my first tutorial base, as well as first sit down pattern that I'm going to do. So you have something at the end of your sit down sessions, but the thing is you only cast on the one time. So by the time you finish that brief project, you've forgotten how to cast on if you want to go ahead and do another pattern. So the mini reward here is not so much of a finished garment, but it's that you've learned how to cast on and you've retained it, and that you've learned how to do the knit stitch and you've retained that as well. So, and these are great for keeping with your stash. I'll show you what I've started to do with my stash. So this is a different yarn. It's a lighter weight and it's cotton. And what I've done with this yarn is I practice with my own stitch work here You know, practice with the tension, practice with the new yarn. It was cotton. It was one of my new cotton experiences. And I wanted to see how this worked up as well. And now that's going to live with the 6 bands that I bought with this purchase. And that's going to be part of my stash library repertoire. So I can pull that out and see how that one looks. It's also a variety of different things that I've done with these little swatches, and they're valuable. And so this is for this one here, which I knitted up my mum's hat and scarf last year. No, this year. This year in October I knitted it up for her birthday. And it goes through how that looks as well. So they're definitely assets to you for later use. And it saves you a bit of time as well when you're looking at gauge, which is something completely different. Let's not talk about that right now, but it's just a great thing for you to have when you are creating your own stash. So I'm starting to do that with all of the yarn that I purchase. So I think that covers where to go to learn your tutorials, how to maybe buy the best supplies to make your experience the most enjoyable. And what else do we have here in my notes? Just gonna quickly look. Setting aside the time and making sure that it's uninterrupted time. It's very important. And I've created the list of what you do to create those swatches and learn your craft. So the cast on and the foundation chain and the knit stitch and the single crochet. Once you've done that, you can actually then begin to develop a method where you will include new stitches. So for knitting, it's the knit stitch, which is the basic, and then the purl stitch, which would be the next. For crochet, the basic would be the single crochet, and then the next would be the double crochet. So you can build up from that foundation. And I think what I'll do is I'll come back and visit some of those later on in other videos that I put together. But right now, I think that's plenty to work with. And I hope that you found something here that's useful. If you have liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. Maybe join this and subscribe. That would be brilliant. I do love the encouragement when you subscribe. And if you have a comment, please include that below in the comment section of this video. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.